Glycemic index is a measurement of how quickly the glucose in a food, whether it's present as sugars or starch, enter the bloodstream when you eat that food. Glycemic load is a similar measurement, but it also incorporates how much glucose is in the food into the calculation. So an example of a food with a high glycemic index but a low glycemic load would be watermelon. Its sugars get into the bloodstream pretty quickly, but it doesn't have a ton of sugar. And why people say to avoid high glycemic index and high glycemic load foods is because they're trapped in the insulin model of obesity, which has been disproven in the scientific literature. That way of thinking reflects an overly simplistic view of health and an overly simplistic view of the value of food. First of all, the glycemic index and glycemic load is only relevant if you are only consuming that food. As soon as you combine foods, it's not an accurate measurement. Add protein, fat, and fiber to your meal and you blunt the blood sugar response notably. There's also a huge amount of individual variability in terms of our blood sugar responses to specific foods. So one person might have a higher glycemic response to a banana, and the next person might have a higher glycemic response to an apple. And then the third person might have a lower glycemic response to cookies. And even when we're talking about insulin resistance, like type 2 diabetes, the more useful thing to know is just the grams of carbohydrates in a food. So you can figure out A, how much insulin you might need if you're insulin dependent, or B, what else to add to your meal to help blunt that blood sugar response. So if you look at all of the nutrition information on Nutrivore.com, I've chosen not to incorporate the glycemic index. It's not a very useful number for most people.